Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And I'm really excited and happy today, listeners, to have my guest, Mari Kovanen. Is that how you pronounce your surname?
Yeah.
Mari is a registered psychologist and dating coach. So welcome to the podcast, Mari.
Thank you so much, Lyn. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you.
And we're going to be talking today about empowered dating and taking charge of your love life. But before we actually get stuck into the topic, Mari, I'd really love you to share, a bit of background about yourself and what's led you to be doing what you're doing now.
Okay. So I try to keep it brief, so we've got time to talk about what we actually need to talk about. So to give you kind of brief overview, so basically I'm a registered psychologist and I worked with individuals, couples as a relationship expert and therapist for the past 14 years or so. And that kind of led me to dating coaching then and seeing how maybe some of those couple problems could have been avoided if more attention was paid at the time of choosing a partner, because most people just literally end up in a relationship without thinking about it too much and what type of person might be a good fit or what do I need and so on. So that kind of led me to this dating coaching. But even prior to that, of course, I had my own experiences of dating. So I was a single girl about town in my early 30s and was in my 20s. I'd been in sort of longer term relationship. I was single and in my 30s. And that's when, for many people, of course, when you're single and you want to have the option of having a family and suddenly you become aware of the biological clock and all of that. And that was the early days of online dating. So this was a time where online dating was just kind of talked about quietly.
Yeah.
Because it was a little bit embarrassing because you might be seen a little bit desperate, but I saw it as an opportunity to connect with more people. That's not always such a good thing, especially in this day and age of these apps and what's kind of available. But anyway, it was much more at the time, but that's what I was doing. So I started dating, and especially like dating online, and I went on numerous dates and tried different things. And initially it was lots of fun, but because I didn't have the tools to date in a very sort of much more conscious way, I literally just went out there and burned myself out. And then there comes a point also when you are meeting people who are not necessarily a very good fit. And I ended up in these what's today called situationships, and really started to really worry about what's going to happen. Is my dream of potentially having this long-term relationship and potentially having an option of having, family, is that ever going to happen? And so then, to cut the long story short, there were, of course, there were ups and downs and what have you. And I had to take a break even because I literally burned out. I was just like, I can't go on like this because for me and our meeting is just not the right thing. But I needed to take a break. I needed to have a more of a strategy. Well, that's kind of loosely to put it, but much more of a sort of conscious way of dating, and also thinking about what it is that I needed and wanted out of a relationship. And then I did I even changed countries.
Mhm.
Because I'm originally from Finland, and I went to do my first degree and some other studies later on in London, but then I moved to Finland to work. And then, so yes, I was in my early 30s, and I realized that, in smaller circles, it seemed like everyone was already taken. So I thought, okay, I'm in my 30s. What shall I do? I'm not ready to buy my, place and settle. And I had this kind of itch in some ways that I wanted to still go and return to London, which I did. And then I met my husband, and yes, we've been married now for 11 years and together for 16 years and so on. So with all of that kind of the experience of dating and realizing that I lacked the relationship skills and tools for dating, but also being in the relationship. And then that led me to become a therapist and kind of learning from both sides for myself, but also then working with individuals and couples and helping them with their relationships. And then now kind of it's like the full circle. It's like, okay, now I'm also helping women with their dating life and choosing the right type of person for them instead of burning themselves out when they're dating. And so that was quite a long introduction.
No, that's lovely. I love to hear people's sort of personal journey towards doing what they're doing now. So getting onto the topic then of empowered dating and taking charge of your love life, what are the things that people really need to understand around that?
Well, I think we need to understand that one fundamental thing, first of all, is, and this is not always something that many women want to hear, but it's about our kind of psychobiology and how we were designed, because our brain and our nervous system is still very much the same as for our ancestors, and where we are today and the kind of society where we are living. So we are living in this, and from 60s onwards, women have felt much more empowered to kind of, or being encouraged to sort of step forward. And there's been all of this sort of women's liberation movement and empowerment. And of course, there was all the sort of sexual liberation and all of that sort of stuff, which is all good stuff. And also we've been sort of, we are told that as women, we can go out there and do exactly the same, everything that men do and so on. But where it gets confusing is that the dating and mating is still very much is going in the similar way what happened to our ancestors. Okay, the needs are different, but what we need to understand is that perhaps it explains some of the behaviors, and so many women are confused about. So many women have said, oh, I thought that I could do this casual relationship, but now realizing that I'm developing feelings for him, and there's something wrong with me.
Mm.
So really understanding that there is this psychobiology and how we've been designed, because everything is about reproduction, whether you are producing a child with this person or not. But that's the kind of the basis. And what we need to understand is that, so women who lived in cave times, or, she needed protection. So she needed to find a man who would be, of course, physically able to protect her and her offspring, but also someone who would be reliable and would be there with her. The needs today are different. Women are much more kind of financially stable. They don't necessarily need that kind of physical protection, but of course, emotional protection we still need. If we want to create a family unit, of course we need, and we want that, in the relationship, that there's someone who we can trust. We feel that that person's got our back, and vice versa. And there's, someone who's emotionally present. So it's about, today is more about emotional safety rather than the sort of course, if you have a family and you want to stay at home and, bring up children, you need to have someone who's also providing them. but that's maybe less of a focus than there was before. And for men then, what's confusing is that so men are looking for, well, those men are in different stages, or some men are kind of looking for a relationship, but they're also trying to kind of, especially young men in their 20s, they're trying to kind of see what their options are. And many times people end up in these situationships, and they say, well, I didn't know how that happened because I, wanted something more than he could give, and so on. But so men are sort of biologically programmed. This is not an excuse for bad behavior, though. It's not like they don't have a brain, but they've been biologically sort of programmed to go out there and spread the seeds. And of course, they are choosing. So they are, but because sometimes women say, well, how could he be looking for a reliable person, a woman, but then at the same time be sleeping with lots of people? So how is that all possible? So for a man, and this comes from our psychobiology from olden times, men don't know if their offspring is they or not. They don't necessarily, they can't, decide. Woman will always know because she will give birth to the child. Yeah. So she will know. So there's no questions about it.
There's no doubt about who the mother is.
Yeah, but he can't guarantee that. So in some ways, when men go out and they quickly have sex with someone, and then it's almost like men are looking for, and of course there are exceptions to the rule, but on the kind of broader sort of way of looking at this, men are looking for a woman who is reliable. And how does he know that she is reliable and will have his offspring? Well, if she is showing kind of signs that also she's not just going out with anyone, but she is kind of choosing him because there's something special about him. So, and men get even rewarded, they get dopamine hits for pursuing women, and they get more rewards if their advances are not quite successful consistently. So if she kind of says, oh, I don't want to sleep with you right now, and I want to get to know you, I want to take things slowly and what have you, that's like a selection process. So if he's just looking for a good time, and if she's, this is not in any way to kind of say that you should go out and sleep with someone on their first date, but if you're looking for a committed relationship, we're talking about here specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
So just for that, I'm all for exploration and all of that. But when we are looking for really a committed relationship, and you don't want to end up in a situationship or something really confusing and something that makes you feel really bad about yourself and so on. So just to understand this, that actually taking things slowly and becoming the chooser in choosing the right person for you is really important, because often women in dating, and I guess over time, have felt like they need to be there waiting to be chosen, and or then it become, she might get really sort of choose the wrong type of person. Yeah. And then start chasing the guy who's not really interested and so on. But empowered dating is about really owning who you are, knowing who you are, and knowing that, knowing really like this sort of what's good for you. And and not just going with what you think that it's good to kind of get the guy or what have you. And what's really important is to kind of sort of openly communicating that you are looking for a committed relationship, and seeing if he's sticking around. If he is not sticking around when you put certain boundaries, then that's evidence that this is not the right person for you.
Absolutely. And I think some women, tend to ignore those, quite obvious signs. Men have been quite truthful and open and say they're not looking for a committed relationship at that moment in time. They then choose to think, well, if I sleep with him, it'll probably make me more attractive and make him love me. And that's the furthest from the truth, usually.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly that, because that goes back to the caveman times. Unfortunately, we still have the same brain. So it is just really understand the kind of where that all kind of dating and mating, the behaviors come from. And yes, it doesn't make her any kind of, her to be more attractive in his eyes if she sleeps with him. That's more evidence that, on the kind of evolution, if you look at from that perspective, it's really evidence that, well, if she's sleeping with me now so quickly, would she do that with someone else potentially as well? And then, so it's for women to become the chooser. And because these decisions, who you choose to be with, and especially when you are thinking about if you're dating in your sort of in the years when you are thinking about having a family, if you are choosing a person who already is showing signs of not being committal or is not showing up in the relationship, if you think about then 20 years forward, is that person going to be there with you, bringing up these children, or are you signing up to 20 years of really complicated situations with trying to kind of, if you separate, what happens with co-parenting and everything? So actually your decisions that you make when you're dating have so much impact on your future happiness. So you need to take this really seriously.
I do feel that unfortunately in today's society, we've lost the element of courtship. If you, like you said, if you're looking for a good time and not a long time, then if you just want to have flings, that's fine. But like you say, if you are looking for that commitment, if you're at that stage of life, then that's when being wise enough to take it slowly and let him prove to you that he is the one for you, rather than you try and prove it to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that even biologically, men get rewarded for doing this courtship, because men, they want to provide. So if there's space for them to show up, because they see you, there's something about you that they really like, and then it is like a dance in some way. And I guess that's why dancing is so popular, and especially this, when you think about it, is that sort of checking each other out a little bit, and how does this all this, are we in alignment? Are we not in alignment? If we are not, that's fine. If we're just not the right people for each other, and then someone else will be.
Yeah, and I think it's not taking that personally as well. If a guy shows himself to be not interested at this particular moment in time, not to perceive that as rejection, just realize that he's not the one for you, and he's doing you a favor so that you can find the one who is for you.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's important that when you go on a first date, for example, that don't go out there and put so much effort into. You go out and you buy a new outfit, you buy new this and that, and then you're like, all this anxiety is like, oh my goodness, will they like me? Will they accept me as I am? yes, put effort, but if you put all of this pressure, then you will feel nervous. And then if it turns out to be right fit, you will be such a backlash, really, because you build it up to be so huge. And whereas if you kind of take a much more kind of sort of staged approach, almost like, first, maybe if you connect online, and maybe you have a, phone conversation, and then you decide whether it'd be good to meet, and then you meet very briefly initially, and so on, and only then maybe do something a little bit bigger, so that there's kind of like building up. And that way, initially it's just about kind of seeing, do we enjoy each other's company or not? And
it's like you said, it's sort of wrapped up in not being attached to the outcome. If there's a second date and you look like each other, great. If there isn't, that's also great, because you can move on now to somebody who is a better match for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing for women often is learning to receive. And this is kind of creating the man the space to show up. I guess women, we've been taught that to be nurturing and do things for other people. But if in dating you start kind of going into this, almost like organizing the date for the guy, and he even never has an opportunity, there's another sort of, I hate to call it the word test, but it is some ways kind of seeing what does he do if there's, an opportunity to take you out. Will he ask you out? Or is he putting zero effort, and then you go out and then you organize everything? Because the chances are that if you put loads of effort in the early days, they'll show you what the potential relationship with that person would be like in the future. If he's not showing up straight away, he will never show up then in the relationship later on. So learning to kind of receive and maybe lean back a little bit and see, okay, how is he now handling this situation? Is he putting effort in? And again, like he gets rewarded for it. So if he's into you, he'll put effort. If he's not that into you, or he's looking for something different, that's fine. There's someone else out there in the world.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree with that. It's so interesting, isn't it? My sort of specialism is masculine and feminine energy, and how that works in the dynamics of relationships. And this is exactly what I teach, around women learning to receive and not be the chaser. In other words, not necessarily be the runner, but also, have that high sense of value of yourself, and know your worth and know your power in the dynamic, because if you do make it so easy for him to sleep with you, for example, then, like you said earlier, he's going to be wondering, well, do you do this on the first date with everybody? That's not going to make you a high value woman in his eyes. It will just make you, be one of many girls that's going to be a notch on his bedpost. For example, more than somebody he sees as a long-term girlfriend or wife.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the early dynamic will tell you what will happen later on if it kind of progresses. So it's so important in those early days to really become a kind of present and observe yourself, how your feelings are, and kind of, regulating your emotions and be grounded, and do everything to be grounded, so that the more present you are even on the date, the more you can kind of check, do we enjoy each other's company? Does he have certain qualities that you are looking for, and so on? So, empowered dating is really about becoming conscious instead of just launching into it. I like the look of, him, I'll end up in the relationship, and then I'm like, hold on a minute, what happened there? Now I'm in the relationship, and I never thought about all of these things that might not work for us because we are totally different people. And then it's much more difficult to start backpedaling and especially if you've got children and so on. So the earlier you become conscious and take really charge of your love life and the direction of it, the better chances you are that you find someone who you build a beautiful relationship together with them.
Yeah, and I think we attract that, don't we? Rather than actually have to go looking for it, because we're in a better high vibrational energy. I do feel that we attract who we are to a certain extent. So, if you are perceiving yourself as a high value prize or woman that any man would be honored to have and be honored to marry, then you'll attract a high quality man.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you put boundaries and it's only the one who is willing to kind of jump all the hoops, and this is not about playing games, but someone who will demonstrate that that they want to be with you, they're interested in you, and they kind of keep putting effort in. And then you will have much more success in that way.
Definitely. And be a lot more happier and fulfilled in your relationship. So we've talked about the psychobiology, the sort of DNA that's always been a part of the human race, right since caveman times. And we've talked about women needing to be open and learning that it's the feminine that's the one that receives. You don't need to chase, you're the receiver in the relationship. So, if you find you are chasing, that can come across as a bit needy and desperate, and that can make him pull away. So any other gems that you'd like to share about understanding the things that we need to do to take charge of our love life?
Is a general, you need to turn inwards. Most people, when they're dating, they seem to be just focusing on how is he behaving? What does that mean? But actually, you first need to turn inwards and check in with yourself. How are you and what's impacting you and your behavior? And we're going to talk a lot about kind of the impact of early relationships and the attachment styles and all of that kind of stuff. Because the better you understand who you are, what you need in a relationship, what you want in a relationship, and what type of person potentially would be a good fit, the better chances you are, yes, that means like sometimes clients have said, oh, but now it feels like my dating life is a bit more quiet because I'm not just going for any person. I said, that's okay. Now you don't need to feel burnt out because you are more selective.
Yeah, it's quality over quantity, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Mara, before we sort of wrap things up, I mean, we can talk about, you mentioned the attachment styles, for example, and listeners might be curious to know more about that. It's something I have touched on in other episodes, but, if we want to have a conversation around that in another episode, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics.
We'll make it happen then. But in the interim, how can our listeners get in touch with you? What's your best contact information?
So I'm on Instagram, which is Dr. Marie Kovanen coaching handle. And I do have a free gift for people if they would like to know more. I have a masterclass there. There's a link in my bio on Instagram to my Secrets to Successful Dating masterclass that I did recently. So that's easily accessible there, and you can get more information about the sort of topics that we talked about today, but going even beyond. It's about hour and 20 minutes or something like that. Excellent. Thank you so much. And any final words of wisdom that you want to share before we wrap up the episode? Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. But I guess it's like remembering your own worth and value as a high quality woman. And always doing activities and reminding yourself before anything else that you are worthy of someone's full attention and love.
Couldn't have put it better myself. So thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Mari, and it's been very, very useful. I'm sure very insightful for the listeners as well.
Thank you so much, Lyn. It's been absolutely fantastic.
So on that note, I'll just leave you with true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.